Welcome to today's show. I am your host, Eric Darnley Small, and I want to thank you for once again joining me. If this is your first time, please consider liking and subscribing and clicking that bell so that you'll be notified of any new videos that I upload. If you've been here before, you already know the procedure, how I work, and I will talk to you about the subject of today and go into details, but I also provide links. I provide backup of my work where I'm sourcing my material. And you can find those links on the Mastodon page at mastodon.vtip.me/at what you missed. I encourage people to go to the original websites, go and take a look at the material that I've looked at, and make conclusions for yourself about what it is that we're discussing. And there's a lot of stuff I wanted to get to. I have been somewhat thrown off today because of the news of the day. But I do want to let you know that one of the things I want to talk about today is Israel in crisis. Because I think that there's a lot, just like with the French elections, just like what's going on in Europe. I think we can learn a lot about what's happening in Israel right now. And it's important to discuss that because I think we have a tendency to talk around a lot of issues. And also, just from my own information, I'm incredibly ignorant on a lot of the countries outside of the US, Israel being at the very top of that list, and they are America's biggest ally in the region. We spend a lot of money, we give a lot of political support to Israel, and when they do bad things, we particularly on the left, chastise them. But we need to know also more, go deeper, find out what is going on there. And there is a war within Israel. There's a history to that war. There is Supreme Court rulings and there is protests. All that sound very familiar? They do to me. That's exactly the same thing that's happening here. And the similarities are eerie, actually. There's an attempt to, and has been an attempt to, by the right, I think, in this country to look at as America as exceptional. You know, I think it's a part of sort of Christian nationalism that feels that there is something unique about America, something exceptional. But when we begin to really look closer and look deeper, we begin to find that America is very much like every other country out there. Similar types of struggles, similar types of issues, similar types of divides. And I think that it's worth going through to find out what's happening in Israel, because I personally have always thought of Israel and Jews have really got it together. You know, of any group that has been persecuted throughout history, it's the Jewish people. And particularly here in America, they really seem to have pulled it together after World War II. And creating a nation of Israel is really something that I don't think that you really see a lot of, particularly given where the Jewish people have come historically. And it's pretty incredible to see. It's also incredible to see that there are divides and how much it's similar to what other countries are going through. But first, I have to, and I would feel really remiss to not talk about the news of the day, which is the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. And as much as I don't really want to go into a lot of this, because this is not a breaking news channel, this is a what you missed, hopefully talking about things that nobody else is talking about, and everybody else is talking about this. But like I said, I feel like I would be somewhat remiss if I did not talk about it. And I also think it's applicable to what we're seeing going on, not just in America, but in the world today. Political violence, you know, rhetoric that's gotten out of control, that have gotten out of control because of this rhetoric. And I just want to touch on very briefly, and then I'm going to go through a TikTok because the Washington Post has it, about what we know. And so what we know is there was a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was supposed to be Donald Trump's last campaign stop before the Republican National Convention. A speech to a packed crowd in a swing state, a crucial swing state, then a trip to Milwaukee to officially receive the GOP nomination. So just to set the stage in case of people might be watching this who may not be here in the States, we're at the cusp of the election, of the nomination, which is basically going to be a coronation, really, because the two candidates are pretty much the same candidates from the last time, and they're pretty much seen as uh, really being coronated. There is no real opposition. We know now, which I've talked about already, I'm not going to go into, on the right, amongst Democrats, they're trying to get Joe Biden to get out of the race. But on the right, I should say, that's on the left, on the Democratic left, they're trying to get Joe Biden out. But on the right, they've been pretty much um, in lockstep with Donald Trump. Not across the board. There are issues here and there, but they're pretty much in lockstep with Donald Trump. This assassination attempt, it is still unclear as to the motives of this person. One of the things that I heard out of CNN, that this person was a Republican, yet they donated to recently to a Democrat, which that part of it really seems to be put in there to kind of soften the whole part that he might be a Republican blow. What is fascinating to me more than anything else, people are comparing it to Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, Kennedy's assassination. It's more important to me is, if this is from the right, what is going on the right there? Why is somebody on the Republican side going after Trump? There could be any number of different reasons, but that's what I would like to follow amongst that. Anyway, the Washington Post has a TikTok. Actually, let me see if I can get rid of this for a moment, because I'm going to go briefly into this TikTok so that you can get an idea of what happened, if in case you have been in a bunker somewhere. So this is the layout. This is, again, the Washington Post. This is a layout of the event. And as we can see, actually, let me get rid of myself so I can show you. But what we can see here is basically the distance here. Right over here is the stage. Actually, no, this is where Donald Trump was. This is the stage where Trump was speaking, and this is where the shooter was. Approximate location of the shooter. We know he had a long gun. He had a sniper's rifle. In a matter of minutes, it was cut short. The rally was cut short by gunfire. The FBI is investigating the shooting at the rally for former President Donald Trump as an assassination attempt. Follow live updates. The suspected shooter was a 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, who is now dead as the gunman. Here's what we know about Crooks. There was a victim. The man killed at the rally was Corey Comperton, a father of two daughters, who Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro said died trying to protect his family. Let me see what we know about Crooks. Do we have anything? Suspected rally shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks is from Pennsylvania, 20 years old. Oh my God. Was killed by Secret Service. He was a registered Republican according to voter status records. And the FBI has named 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Pennsylvania as the shooter in what is it described as an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. The Secret Service said its agents neutralized the shooter, who is now dead. Trump said in a post on Truth Social that he was shot with a bullet that pierced his upper right of my ear. One spectator was killed. 2 others were critically injured. Let me see if I can go back to the timeline. I'm not logged into my Washington Post, so I don't think I'll be able to do the full timeline. And it's not the purpose of this video, but I just felt like I needed to mention it because I think it is somewhat significant to what is going on. I want to go into further detail on this, but let me just say, and let me just look into, that was kind of what the Washington Post breaking as of recently, but there has been some reporting about this almost after it happened. And some of it is the global reaction. I want to read that very quickly. This is from NBC News. And it says, and again, I don't know the order in which this was actually came out, but of course, a lot of this is on the old Twitter X website. But Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said in a post on X that he was sickened by the shooting. Political violence is never acceptable. UK's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he was appalled by the shocking scenes. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz both wished Trump a speedy recovery. Macron added that France shared, quote, the shock and indignation of the American people, while Scholz said such acts of violence threaten democracy. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni also offered her best wishes to the presumptive Republican nominee. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky posted on X, such violence has no justification and no place anywhere in the world. He offered his condolences to the spectator who was killed at the rally and two other people who were critically injured. In Japan, where former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe died after he was shot at a political campaign event in July 2022, the country's current leader, Fumio Kishida, called for a stand against violence that challenges democracy. In the Middle East, Benjamin Netanyahu said he and his wife Sarah were shocked by the attack, while Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan said he strongly condemned it. Egyptian President El Sisi called it a treacherous incident on Facebook. But Russia has a very interesting point of view, and be prepared to, I think Russia is giving out its talking points to disinformation in America. Russia blamed Joe Biden's administration for creating the, quote, atmosphere that led to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Quote, we do not believe that the attempt to eliminate and assassinate Trump was organized by the current authorities, Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, told reporters, suggesting even in the denial that it was a possibility. But the atmosphere around candidate Trump provoked what America is confronting today after numerous attempts to remove candidate Trump from the political arena using first legal tools, the courts, prosecutions, attempts to politically discredit and compromise the candidate. It was obvious to all outside observers that his life was in danger. So this is a narrative that Russia wants to get out there. Russia wants to let, to provide talking points and to provide a way for those on the right here in the U.S. to weaponize this, to figure out a way to make this into something that they can use to demonize the left and to blame Joe Biden. This is, again, my speculation, but I think a lot of people agree with it, with me, or would agree with that. But immediately, conspiracy theories about the Trump rally shooting began online. And this is from NBC again, Brandy Zadrovny, who has done a lot of reporting on conspiracy theories, as well as Ben Goggins. And it goes, conspiracy theories, false claims, and unsupported assertions exploded online Saturday after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump during a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. On X, conspiracy theories and false information about the incident gained traction just minutes after the incident occurred, as videos of the incident ripped across the platform, quickly accumulating millions of views. The word staged became the second highest trending topic immediately after Trump, with over 228,000 posts on the platform using the word. In just an hour, numerous posts on X claiming the apparent shooting was staged were viewed several millions of times. There is no evidence to support any claim that the shooting was staged. Trump was visibly injured and spectators were killed while another was injured. Antifa also became a top trending topic on X after social media posts seemingly misidentified the gunman responsible for Saturday's shooting. Established conspiracy theorist Alex Jones live streamed to an audience of hundreds of thousands of people on X after the incident. In a series of posts viewed millions of times Saturday, Jones blamed the deep state. So this is what's happening. This is our new reality. Nothing can be prevented from being weaponized and made into something it's not. So I'm going to speak more on that, my conclusions, my thoughts at the end of this video. But I want to get back into what I intended to do with this video, which is discuss what I think is one of the most interesting things internationally that is not happening in the West, but is happening in the Middle East. And it is happening in our ally, Israel's. And I want to do a little bit of a dive into this and how I came about really understanding what was going on, the source of the problem. And it goes from back in 2018. There was a video series called Believer, and the host Reza Aslan had a series on CNN at that time. And it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like this, talking about internal strife in Israel having to do with religious Orthodox religious groups within Israel. And he goes to, in the video, Believer, and you can still find this. I think you can find this in, if you look online. I think YouTube TV might have it. You may be able to find it some other areas. If you have Max or Discovery or whatever, you might be able to find it. Actually, I'm pretty sure you can if you have a Max subscription. It was, I think, the final episode of the series when it debuted. And this is 6 to 7 years ago. And this is the first time I'd ever heard of it. And host Reza Aslan goes to Israel to learn more about the religious struggle between secular Jews and religious Jews. The main issue is that the Haredi, ultra-religious groups, get social services but refuse mandatory service in the military. As their numbers grow, their political power does as well. That strife continues today and threatens to tear the country apart. So, part of what's happening in the media today, and what everybody knows right now, is Israel's in a war with Hamas, which is located in Gaza. That war has been going on since last year. So what, we're 6 months in or something like that. It's been going on for a ridiculous length of time. The military in Israel is being stretched thin because of how long this war has gone on. And in addition, you have a bunch of men in Israel that have effectively been blocked from having to be what they call conscription. I believe that's the word. We used to call it here the draft, which basically prevents them from having to serve in the military. You're mandatory to serve in the military by law in Israel, except for this one group. And that has created a whole lot of drama between the ultra-religious Haredi in this case, but there are others, ultra-religious right-wing Jews in Israel versus the more secular Jews in Israel. And Aslan talks about this. And again, 6 years ago, this is the first time I'd ever heard of it. And it was fascinating then. It's fascinating now. Take a listen.
At the founding of the State of Israel, there were about 30,000 Haredi. Today, there are more than 800 population of Israel. Part of that population surge has to do with their high birth rates. There are about 6 to 7 children per average in a Haredi family. Some Haredi families have upwards of 10, 11, even 15 children. It's also a relatively poor population. And that's primarily because men in Haredi households tend not to work. And their days studying the Torah, the Talmud, and the Jewish traditions. As a result of this, the Haredim take an enormous amount of state funding, welfare, as we call it. And this has created an enormous amount of resentment among many secular Jews when it comes to the Haredi. They feel as though this is a community that takes and takes and takes from the state, but doesn't give anything back. You see, for the most part, every man and woman in Israel serves in the military for a couple of years. But not the Haredi. They have an exemption because they're studying in yeshiva. They don't have to serve in the military. This wouldn't be a big deal if the Haredi more or less excluded themselves from Israeli society and from politics, but they don't. On the contrary, they've been voting in droves. They have their own political parties, the Ultra-Orthodox Shas party, the Yahadot HaTorah. And as you can imagine, this has created an enormous gulf between the seculars and the Ultra-Orthodox.
You grew up in this house. What was it like when you were growing up?
The street was completely secular, like all my...
The whole block, I think.
Yeah, but we are the only non-religious family in this
There was
street.
left.
Growing up, a completely secular neighborhood not far from here, that when I moved there in 98 or 99, there were no religious families. And 7 years later, we moved out because every Shabbat, our neighbors would throw used diapers and rocks at our car.
Within the Jews, there is a fight between the side, and we are losing.
If you're talking about demographics, yeah, you're losing.
I do think that most secular Jews feel that somehow the Haredi communities do not contribute.
Do you all think that Haredi should serve in the military?
No, my kid is 17. Yeah, next year he goes to the army.
Yeah.
And this guy doesn't go to the army. And my kid is going to face serious risk. I'm not going to sleep at night, but he's going to sleep great and get money from the government. Why? If we're a society which is united, then we should aim for people to take part equally.
We always complain about it, that we are not unified, and the Orthodox Jews has their rabbi, and whatever he says, they will do, and they are unified. And we cannot do it because there's no secular rabbi. There's no secular rabbi.
To the secular Messiah.
So there you go. This is the divide, and I'm
founding
going to
of the state
speak
of
more
Israel,
about this in when I wrap up. But I wanted to give you guys an idea of where does this all begin? Where does this come from, right? So just again to summarize, you have within this country an ultra-Orthodox religious group that is getting special treatment because of their religious beliefs. And meanwhile, everybody else is being forced to do things that they don't normally want to do, like sign up for the military, particularly at a time of war. So you've got people whose children are going out to war and are risking being killed. And as the one gentleman there says, I'm not sleeping nights, but this guy over here, he's sleeping great at night because his child he doesn't have to worry about it. So this is the insidious nature of kind of what's happening. This is the environment that this is breeding, and this is nothing new. Again, this was 6 years ago this show came up. I had no idea that this was still a thing until recently. So what happened recently, right? The all-out assault is what happened, and people may not be aware of this to some extent, but there's another issue that is going on here, and that has to do with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is not popular. He's MAGA, actually. He's Donald Trump in Israel, but he's been around for a long time, so he's not quite analogous to Donald Trump, because Netanyahu has been prime minister going back to not prime minister, but has been a political activist, has been a part of Israel's struggles going back to the 1980s. I mean, I remember him from years ago. He's always been a figure, and also a radically sort of right-wing figure, one of the folks on the further right, against Palestinian statehood, against a lot of these things that two-state solution, that sort of thing. So, but Benjamin Netanyahu also has been caught up in a bit of a scandal. And he was prime minister for a time, and then came out, and then came back, and then came out. And during the time where he came out, where he was no longer prime minister, unlike presidents here, you can't run again after you've done 2 terms. But we can see after you've done 1 term, you can run again and do another term like Donald Trump is doing. Benjamin Netanyahu has done this multiple times. And on the one times where he was out of office, apparently he did some stuff that is, like Donald Trump, criminal. And because of that, he has had his sights on the judiciary that would prosecute him. So this is what is going on here. And, one of the things that is very interesting is that what people may not know is that over the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years, the government of Netanyahu of Israel has been in flux, meaning like what happened in the UK recently and in France, there has been votes of no confidence, which has caused the governments to collapse, right? And apparently in Israel, this has happened multiple times in 1 year. It's so unstable. So recently in 2013, a government was formed after the previous government collapsed. And what was formed was an ultra right wing government. And this is an article from New York Magazine. And it goes into, with this conversation, it goes into some detail as to what happened and what is happening right now after Netanyahu formed his government. And it said at the start of 2023, well before the actions of October 7th, a radical shift was taking shape in Israel that frightened many. That's my commentary. So this is from the New Yorker magazine by Isaac Chotiner. I'm going to go with Chotiner. Several months ago, the new right-wing government of Israel has put forward legislation that severely limits the power of the judiciary. For several weeks, tens of thousands of protesters have gathered in Tel Aviv and other cities to rally against what they view as a grave risk to their democratic institutions. Netanyahu, despite being a paragon of Israeli right, is now more moderate than most of his cabinet, which is full of extremists. I'm going to insert here, by the way. Part of the problem, you've got this issue with Netanyahu being investigated and the courts siding with the investigators on going after Netanyahu. That's why Netanyahu has an issue. For others, particularly ultra right wing religious groups, it has been over this issue of conscription and the rights that non-Jews have in Israel. They don't go into detail on that in this article, but I know that from my own research. That's part of the reason why the judiciary is in trouble and is under attack. But let me go on. Continuing on in this article, Dahlia Scheinlein, I think that's right, an analyst and policy fellow at Century International and also a columnist for Haaretz, says the government is waging an all-systems assault on the judiciary first, but also numerous other areas of Israeli society. The ideological agendas of his coalition partners are very clear. They want more religious and theocratic society. They want complete and permanent control over as much of the West Bank as they can have, and they want Israel to retain effective control over the perimeters of Gaza. So let me, again, go into this, point out a couple of things. Again, this article is well before the incident, the attack in October 7th, 2023. So already those who have understood or done research on this Netanyahu government, this newly formed government, already knew that they had sights on Gaza. Part of the problem with the judiciary, again, from their perspective, is they believe that non-Jews have rights, human rights. They believe that the Palestinians that are in Gaza have human rights, and they have been ruling in such a way, the judiciary has been ruling in such a way to restrain the government from doing what essentially they're doing right now. And that is begin to push into Gaza and begin to treat these other groups as second-class citizens. So moving forward, crisis over the Haredi military service exemptions is a seismic event for Israel's politics. This is from Haaretz. Anshel Pfeiffer, I'm going to go with. So this is March 27, 2024. This article, and it says the crisis caused by Prime Minister Netanyahu's inability to fulfill his coalition's agreement pledge to the Ultra-Orthodox parties to pass legislation guaranteeing yeshiva students continued exemption from military service could become a seismic moment that redraws the borders of Israel's political camps. The refusal of the ultra-Orthodox rabbis to accept any compromise that would limit the number of exemptions of young Haredi men at a time of war that is severely testing the Israel Defense Force personnel capacity has dragged the servicing Israeli public to the limits of its patience. Even Netanyahu's fully right-wing governing coalition can no longer withstand the pressure. But within the governing coalition, there remains a handful of members who, if not for the future of the state, them for the future of the party and their own public careers will join the defense ministry in opposing any exemption bill. So I'm going to go into this a little bit in a moment, but basically what has happened is they have been able to, the ultra right wing, have been able to block, effectively neutralize during peacetime the mandatory signing up of Haredi men, of ultra right wing men into the military. They've been able to do a dance basically and prevent that from happening. But now you're at war. And now you're in a situation where you need bodies, you need people to start showing up. And now the government is once again pulling a draft, is once again forcing people to come in and immediately begin to sign up and serve in the military. So this issue that had been pushed back during peacetime, now that they're at war, is once again coming to the fore. And now they're once again, the government is going to the judiciary and is demanding action. And what had to happen and what was supposed to happen is the government needed to create a law to protect the Haredi men, to put into law, because there is no law. And because there is no law, the judiciary is saying these men have to be drafted to the military. So what Netanyahu and his coalition was supposed to do was create a law that would protect these men. But apparently, even within this Israeli coalition that Netanyahu has created of ultra-right wingers, not all of them are not on board with protecting these Haredi men from not being enlisted in the military. So he was never able to pass the law that was needed to protect these people. So the judiciary takes action, and they hand down a ruling. And as you can imagine, it does not go well for the Ultra-Orthodox. But anyway, continuing on, from the New York Times, this is June 26, 2024, Aaron Boxerman, and it's entitled, Israeli Military Must Draft Ultra-Orthodox Jews, Supreme Court Rules. In a unanimous decision, a panel of 9 Supreme Court justices held that there was no legal basis for the long-standing military exemption given to ultra-Orthodox religious students. In a country where military service is compulsory for most Jewish Israelis, both men and women, the exemption for the ultra-Orthodox has long prompted resentment. But anger over the group's special treatment has grown as the war in Gaza has stretched into its 9th month, requiring tens of thousands of reservists to serve multiple tours and costing the lives of hundreds of soldiers. The decision threatened to widen one of the most painful divisions in Israeli society, pitting secular Jews against the ultra-Orthodox, who say their religious study is as essential and protective as the military. The top court has repeatedly warned the government that to continue the policy protecting religious students from being drafted, that stuff that's bracketed is, I'm putting that in there to add clarity, it must be written into law, though that law would be subject to constitutional challenges as previous ones were, while also giving the government time to hammer out legislation. But for 7 years since the last law was struck down, successive Israeli governments have dragged their feet in drafting new legislation. In 2023, the law finally reached its expiration date, leading the Israeli government to order the military simply not to draft the ultra-Orthodox while lawmakers worked on an exemption. Israel's Attorney General, in a letter to the government officials on Tuesday, said the military had committed to draft at least 3,000 ultra-Orthodox religious students out of more than 60,000 of draft age during the coming year. The letter noted that the number would come nowhere near to bridging the gap in military service between the ultra-Orthodox community and other Israeli Jews. Instead, the ruling included a means of pressuring the ultra-Orthodox to accept the court's judgment, the suspension of millions of dollars in government subsidies given to religious schools or yeshivas that previously supported the exemption students, striking a blow to revered institutions at the heart of the ultra-Orthodox community. The court's ruling threatens Mr. Netanyahu's fragile wartime coalition, which includes secular members who oppose the exemption and ultra-Orthodox parties that support it. Either group breaking ranks could cause the government to collapse and call new elections at a time when popular support for the government is at a low. So, what the ultra Orthodox has feared for such a long time has finally come to pass because of this war in Gaza between Israeli government and Hamas. Because of this war, the position that the ultra Orthodox and that the government has taken by not drafting these gentlemen who are of military age, all of that has now come to the surface. And they are no longer being protected by anyone, including the judiciary, which has now found that they must be drafted. But these guys are not going quietly. There has been protests in the streets, as you can imagine. As you know, you saw in the video before, they are serious about their opposition to this. Haredi minister's car attacked as violence erupted at anti-draft protests in Jerusalem. And this is from the Times of Israel. This is July 1st by the Times staff. And it says thousands of ultra-Orthodox demonstrators on Sunday protested in Jerusalem against the conscription of Haredi yeshiva students into the military, with some throwing rocks and clashing with police. 5 people were arrested in clashes during which protesters also lit fires in the streets and attacked the car of the housing minister. The demonstrators mostly belonged to the extremist Jerusalem faction, which numbers some 60,000 members and regularly demonstrates against the enlistment of yeshiva students. Anger has boiled as the issue of ultra-Orthodox enlistment has returned to the government's agenda against the background of the ongoing war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Haredim are angry at their own lawmakers who are, as members of the coalition, backed a recent move to revive a bill from a previous parliament that would lower the age of exemption from mandatory service for ultra-Orthodox yeshiva students from 26 to 21 and very slowly increase their rate of conscription. Protesters on Sunday carried signs reading, "We will not enlist in the enemy army," and "We will die and not enlist," as they blocked an intersection that leads to a heavily ultra-Orthodox area in the capital. This is from Reuters. Israel's defense minister okay's plan to start drafting is ultra-Orthodox. And this is from Reuters, July 9th, 2024. And it says, Israeli defense minister approved a plan on Tuesday to start drafting ultra-Orthodox Jews into the military service, a move likely to further strain relations within Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's fractious right-wing coalition. His government relies on 2 ultra-Orthodox parties that regard conscriptions exemptions as key to keeping their constituents in religious seminaries and out of the melting pot army that might test their traditional customs. After discussions with top military officials, Galan approved their recommendations for so-called first call-up of ultra-Orthodox men into the military after the coming month, the defense ministry said in a statement. So, this is about to get very serious. This was July 9th, so this was only, a few days from this video. So I think what we're beginning to see here is an escalation, a building of what's going on in Israel, their own little civil war, their own struggle. What I find interesting here is there's a number of reasons why the ultra-Orthodox don't want their young men going into the military, and one of it is indicated in this article. And they say something to the effect of, it is important to keep their constituents in religious seminaries and out of a melting pot army that might test their traditional customs. What that is basically saying is that the ultra-Orthodox Jews, their leaders, are afraid if their young men end up in the military, they're going to become exposed to information, to teachings, to beliefs, to thinking that is outside of their religious dogma. And they're frightened to death of that because they could lose those men if they're ever able to begin to think outside of the very narrow and the very restrictive mindset of their religious teachings. That seems to be the biggest concern, not that they'll die or that they'll be injured or that that their families would lose the breadwinner. Actually, not the breadwinner, because the women bring in the bread, but not their physical safety is not the concern of the religious leaders. Their concern is that if these men go into a quote unquote melting pot of the military, of both secular Jews, they may begin to learn and see things and become exposed to things that will challenge their religious beliefs. Fascinating. So let me give some final thoughts here. This video has gone on longer, but it is needed because there's so much news. I want to begin with my final thoughts on the Trump assassination attempt, which is what everyone is calling it, I think rightly. And this is more evidence that America is in decline. It is also more evidence against American exceptionalism, which is something that lives on the right. And American exceptionalism, this is from the Wikipedia, and it says it's the conservative notion that America was somehow, quote, distinct, unique, or exemplary compared to other nations. Proponents argue that the values, political systems, historical developments of the U.S. are unique in human history, often with the implication that it is both destined and entitled to play a distinct and positive role on the world stage. That notion is being put to test. And there are religious groups that believe that, Mormons, as well as other Southern Baptists and other religious, Christian religious groups believe that America is unique in the world, that it is not, cannot befall other issues that take place in third world countries, let's say, in like Africa and in parts of Latin America, where these, they're not God's chosen country. America is unique, and because it's unique, we don't have to worry about these things. And on top of this, we have the right to instruct these other countries how to be, how to act, and whether they're allowed to get weapons, nuclear weapons, any other weapons. And it is a core belief among conservatives, among the right in this country, of American exceptionalism. We're seeing once again how they are wrong about that America is as vulnerable as any other country to all these struggles, all these things. And, like climate change, the left has been right on these issues. The violent rhetoric on the right, in addition to actions like the weakening of gun laws, has created a climate of violence. The right has often talked about the Second Amendment solutions. Is that what we're seeing here with this assassination attempt? This week, the RNC is nominating Donald Trump. Expect Trump to use this incident against Biden and the Democrats and to demonize his enemies. Could this be a pivotal event that changes the course of history in America? Are we beginning to see what a lot of people are saying, the Rostock fire, which brought about the Nazi movement or whatever? Are we beginning to see something that could be pivotal in America's history, in a change in America switching or moving towards a different direction, a darker direction, you might say, with this assassination attempt? In addition, why is the press so shocked by this? I'm seeing a lot of, oh my God, pearl clutching sort of shock over this. And even in tweets and in statements by both Democrats and Republicans, that there seems to be some surprise that this would happen. We've seen more and more violent rhetoric on the right for years. And this quote unquote climate of taking on political rivals was created by the former president, who claimed only months ago that the FBI had tried to assassinate him when they raided Mar-a-Lago in 2022, and by the High Court, which proclaimed the president was immune from crimes committed as official acts. Americans feel the guardrails are off, and it has thrown the country into chaos like a number of countries, including Israel. A lot of these actions and attempts on people's lives are out of desperation because no one believes that talking works anymore. People really begin to believe that the only way out, the only way to get past this is to take action into their own hands. Wrongly, of course, they believe that. And I'm wondering again, I'm going to beat this drum more and more, because I have said, and I said it in my last video, that I wonder that Democrats aren't falling into the same trap in this idea that they are voting by fear. I'm going to repeat my warning that voting on the basis of fear is a problem. Trump and Project 2025 are a threat, but we cannot be forced to vote for a candidate based on fear and disdain for the other guy. Democracy suffers. I understand very clearly about what a lot of people are saying, particularly those who are former Republicans who know their party, and they're fighting. They're getting people out there to vote against Donald Trump because he is such a threat. But that is not a way a good democracy works. A good democracy works for something, not against something else. And by the way, I seem to recall when Donald Trump ran for the first time, it was the most important election. Then in 2020, that became the most important election. Now here we are again. So are we ever going to get past this idea that we can start voting for people based on what they stand for and what they believe, instead of we got to vote against that other guy because he's going to destroy the country? So let me go back to Israel. Final thoughts on Israel in crisis. What to make of this struggle in Israel? Israel has always been a bastion of stability in the Middle East, in my mind. And I'm talking about not, the overall struggle. I'm talking about the government itself and its people. They've usually been pretty stable. I mean, a lot of people have said that it is the only functioning democracy. A lot of people, of course, now question that. But that has been the belief, and that's been my belief in general. But even here, internal strife pits brother against brother over many different issues. The series Believer goes into great depths of the contempt the right-wing religious Israelis have for their secular countrymen outside of the conscription issue. For instance, the Haredi live in an insular life that many progressive Jews see as sexist. The women work, the men do not, yet the women do not have power equal to men. And due to the women working outside the home, they are more likely to be introduced into secular world, which has caused issues in the household. Again, you'd have to take a look at the video Believer. I just highlighted this one issue with regard to conscription, but the episode is a 45-minute episode. It talks about a lot of different things. Particularly, it interviews a woman who talks very plainly about the sexism within the ultra-right-wing community, how women really have no power and are being abused. Take a look at that, the series to take a look at that. There's also a number of Haredi, and this is something that is brought up in the video that I showed. And the numbers of the Haredi and the ultra-right compared to the secular Jews is stunning. As shown in the Believer, the birth rate of the ultra-Orthodox Israeli is many times that of their fellow countrymen. The resentment that secular Jews have for their religious countrymen is evident. They live on tax dollars and have huge households, putting more strain on the social system. In my mind, this is a similar to, but the inverse of the argument conservatives in America have for the poor, but less religious in the U.S. This sense of unfairness breeds anger and hatred. So we're seeing a similarity here in Israel as we see in the right here in America, that there truly is contempt for people who use the social services and don't work. And the idea that the tax burden is being borne upon one group over the other is something that breeds a great deal of resentment and disdain among the residents. And then finally, I want to show another clip from Believer, which I think is very important, because in Israel, as in America, as in Iran, as in many other countries, we're seeing that religion divides, right? Here in the U.S., Project 2025 calls for America's laws to adhere to biblical scripture. The religious feel persecuted and that God is on their side. This other clip from Believer, we see the intersection of God's law and man's law create strife. Both sides are dug in. I'm going to play this quick video so that you can see, because I think this is really telling for what's happening in Israel, and I believe what's happening and what could happen with this Project 2025 here in the U.S. Let me play this.
More than a dozen ultra-Orthodox members of the Israeli parliament. He's also the Minister of Health. From what I understand, your rabbi was the one who actually encouraged you to enter into politics. Did that create any conflict for you at all?
We never have personal goals. We always have the goals from the rabbi. We have a council of sages. They tell us how to vote.
Do you understand how that might concern some people in Israel, that you are not really separating religion and politics?
So that's their problem. So there's the conflict. So what?
No, but you're not just a Knesset member. You are also the Minister of Health, which means that your responsibilities are to every single Israeli citizen, regardless of how they see the Torah.
How come in the polls and the surveys I was voted last week the best minister? And we're trying to make it that the nation of Israel should be a nation which the Torah is the example. We are Orthodox people, and we do everything what the Torah says.
But you would recognize that there are, of course, many, many, many Jews, perhaps millions of Jews in Israel who do not share your religious views.
So, in the meantime, they live abroad, I live here.
Well,
They have to decide what they want.
I'm sorry, I mean actual Jews here in Israel who do not see themselves.
I don't think so.
You are leaving out certain Jews and non-Jews who are Israeli citizens who may feel as though you are actually forcing your particular religion, your particular views upon them.
The Torah is the Torah. We obey the Torah. The land of Israel is because of the Torah. So what the Torah says that we're supposed to do. That's the reason we are Jews. We'll never change. The Torah has never changed. No. Whatever you are going to try to change, we will not let the change. We are against change.
So there you go. We are against change. The Torah is the Torah. We're not going to change. The Torah hasn't changed. This is the future. This is the future, I believe. Well, it's definitely what is happening today in Israel. This is the strife. This is the struggle. But it's also going to be the struggle in America, going back to the Trump assassination attempt, going back to what is happening here in the U.S. This has happened in Muslim countries as well. This has happened all over. And now we're seeing it very prominently happening in Israel. It divides, it causes strife, and it really puts a strain on the country and of its people. It's going to be fascinating to see. Again, this beginning of the drafting of the Ultra-Orthodox Jews, where they have said, we are not leaving. We are not going to sign up for the military. This whole thing is really just beginning, and it's worth following, and I will continue following it in future videos. Please let me know if you guys are interested and if you find this fascinating. You can do that at the Mastodon at mastodon.vtip.me/@whatyoumissed, or in the comments. Let me know if you've enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more like it. I plan on doing some more because I find this all very fascinating. Thank you again, everyone, for watching today's show, and I will see you, or actually you will see me, on the next one. Take care, everyone. Hey there, fantastic viewers. Eric Darnley Small here, and I hope you're loving today's episode of What You Missed. You've reached the end of today's show, but don't worry, there's more show coming up. If you're watching this on YouTube, please click the bell so that you'll be notified when more content is available. You can also help the channel by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. It helps the YouTube algorithm find new viewers so that I can keep bringing you all this incredible content you enjoy. But wait, there are more ways to support the show. You can make a contribution through the show's PayPal, which goes a long way in helping produce even better content for you. And consider becoming a part of our growing community by joining our Mastodon site at mastodon.vtip.me/@whatyoumissed for more engaging discussions and exclusive updates. And here's something you won't want to miss. Mark your calendars for our live show streaming on YouTube and stream.vtip.me Monday mornings, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Your support means the world to me, and together we're making What You Missed the best it can be. Thanks for being a part of my journey.